Let's face it, moving in with a significant other can be a daunting task. There is the physical moving of furniture, the changing of address for your mail, setting up utilities, finding someone with a truck to help you. Trust me, from my own personal experience, the list can go on for quite a bit. But one aspect of moving in with a significant other is the risk you both take against your relationship. You may be asking me what I mean by that. But the reality is that regardless of your beliefs, you should be aware of what you're getting yourself into when it comes to living full-time with your partner. For example, in my own experience of living with my husband prior to getting married, I witnessed firsthand the pros and the cons behind the situation, and I hope to enlighten you to make an educated decision when and if the situation arises. According to Ashley Fetters from The Atlantic in 2008, the rate of a success of marriage in accordance to moving with each other before marriage is a difficult situation to quantify. The Pew Research Center recently released a report detailing their finds of how different demographics perceived the idea of cohabitation. And to no one's surprise, the topic is instilled with debate. I'm going to talk to you today first about the divide of opinions about cohabitation. Second, about how it is dangerous for some relationships to do so. And lastly, a solution so we can decide if cohabitation is right for you and your relationship. First, we'll discuss how divided many people are on the subject of cohabitation. The concept of cohabitation is viewed differently by specific groups of people. These can be quantified by religion, political affiliation, or age. Juliana Horowitz, Nikki Graff, and Gretchen Livingston wrote the piece Views on Marriage and Cohabitation in the U.S. in 2019. The younger adults often see cohabitation as a pathway to having a successful marriage. While this can be seen as a positive path for many young adults, plenty of people feel otherwise about the concept. For example, according to the study, 63% of adults aged 18 to 29 believed that cohabitation prior to marriage gave relationships a better chance at success. When comparing that to the 77% of adults aged 65 and over who disagree, we can start to see a discrepancy of opinions. These statistics speak of what time has done in changing people's opinions on the matter. Since the 1960s, some major statistics regarding the tendencies of cohabitation before marriage have altered according to Brett and Kate McKay's article, Should You Live Together Before Marriage, in 2017. These statistics include that living together prior to getting hitched has increased 1,500% since 1960s and 30% in just the last decade. And while almost half of Americans disapproved of the arrangement in 1981, a quarter century later, that number fell to 27%. Today, 2/3 of new marriages are preceded by cohabitation. As we move forward, one last statistic to keep in mind from Nikki Graff's article, Key Findings on Marriage and Cohabitation in the U.S. in 2019, the article mentioned that 63% of adults younger than 30 say couples who live together before marriage have a better chance at a successful marriage. In short, while the perspective of cohabitation is seen in a positive light, it does not mean that there aren't obstacles that those who do so need to overcome. Now that we have a clear understanding of not only the array of opinions and the rate in which cohabitation is occurring, we can touch on some of the risks that are involved in sharing a living space with a partner. Regardless of what an article may say, people will often decide what they want to do in a relationship. Kimberly Lawson in 2020 wrote in What Living Together Before Marriage Means for Relationships, writes that there are some factors behind unsuccessful cohabitation. One of these contributors is income level. In the study, the amount of income the couple made had a large influence on the direction of the relationship would take. For example, it was found that the less money a couple makes, the less likely they are to become married. This finding provides an understanding that your fiscal situation when cohabitating is a very influential aspect of your relationship being a success or not. Aside from your financial situation, a factor you must be aware of when moving with your significant other is what is called cohabitation effect. Rachel Chateau in 2018 in Should You Get Married If You Haven't Lived Together First, an expert weighs in, uses the term cohabitation effect for us to comprehend what lengths we will put ourselves through when things aren't going so well. The cohabitation effect essentially means that couples stay together longer than they would when they live together because it is harder to leave the relationship once you've enmeshed your life. This can be detrimental, especially when people feel as if they are too obligated to continue trying to make things work just because they have a lease, furniture, and likely a messy relationship to cut off in order to get out scot-free. Julie Baumgardner in 2018 in Should Couples Live Together Before Marriage mentions another risk involved with those who choose cohabitation. In the article, Baumgardner highlights that those who are likely to cohabitate may also view marriage in a different light. The article believes that the increased cohabitation, serial cohabitation, and premarital cohabitation has led to consistent downward trends in the belief that marriage is special. This is a scary concept, especially when you consider how marriage is supposed to be a lifelong endeavor. A marriage should be seen as a special experience. Now that we have discussed the dangers of cohabitation and how it is a risk to a relationship as well as the individual within, we're lastly going to discuss how to approach the concept of cohabitation. When trying to find the right way to go about living together with your significant other, there is no clear way to approach the situation. In order to make the process as beneficial as possible, here are some guidelines to consider when making that life-changing decision. Brian Forbes, in The Pros and the Cons of Living Together Before Marriage in 1996, writes that it is important to think about your end goal prior to moving in with a partner. Oftentimes, the end goal of your partners and yourself may not be the same. Be sure to consider what both of your wants are prior to cohabitating. As mentioned before, consider your financial situation prior to moving in. Kimberly Lawson in What Living Together Before Marriage Means for Your Relationship in 2020 brings up some studies that really highlight what your finances can predict pertaining to successful marriage. Lawson states that the more money you make, the more likely you are to get married, especially if you and your partner make about the same. Alternatively, couples who aren't as well off are more likely to separate. In short, the subject of moving in before marriage deserves a bit of due diligence. Many factors that lead people down the path are directions that initially seem correct in the moment, but deserves a bit more understanding of what makes a long-term relationship successful. We have examined the divide of opinion about cohabitation, how it is dangerous for some relationships to do so, and lastly, what types of situations that exist which are statistically doomed to succeed. Cohabitation is indeed a huge part of our modern society. As the U.S. becomes more diverse, the more accepting of personal wants and liberties of its people. We have had some growing pains. In this case, the choice of living with your partner before marriage, while as enticing as it may seem initially, may not be the correct for most. It is most important to be sure that you are ready for such a big step in order for it to be a successful one. Without doing so, many people can feel trapped and make a choice of leaving a relationship that is much more difficult than if they had not decided to move in together in the first place. Ultimately, you should abstain from moving in if any of the aforementioned situations apply to you and your significant other. So please, refrain from making hasty decisions. Moving in before marriage can often put you at a disadvantage and can wind up wasting a lot of time, energy into your love life.